All right, we are the narrative group with AAC.
So, when a student is given a new AAC device, according to this Allenbark et al. 2025 article, one of the first goals in therapy should be to become familiar with the device. With this, a child can learn how to do things like requesting, talking about their wants and needs, and talking about their likes and dislikes. Once a child feels more comfortable and is using the device more efficiently, more complex tasks can be used for activities like story retell and different types of narratives. When doing a story retell paired with an AAC device, it's a great time to increase the student's knowledge of sentence complexity, expand their vocabulary, and explore other story elements. In a 2009 study, researchers found that narrative tasks are often harder for students with an AAC device because of the amount of detail needed to retell and discuss stories. Researchers discuss how narrative tasks can be made easier by the SLP pre programming the vocabulary words needed to help make the therapy session more interactive. According to researchers in a 1999 study, language impairments often coexist or lead to difficulties with literacy, which includes narratives. By working on literacy skills with an AAC device, SLPs are helping children not only explore their device, but also improving their overall language and literacy skills. These skills are important when it comes to daily social interactions on top of academic successes and helps the child identify key elements when they're retelling anything. For example, they might go home and talk to about their day with a parent, and they'll need those retell skills to talk about what they did, who they played with, and what they learned in class, etc. In a 2022 study, Peterson et al. Found that literacy is actually a skill that needs to be worked on regardless of language impairments, as the US has had low percentages, with only 35% of fourth graders in the United States meeting the proficiency as of 2019. So, regardless of language impairments, literacy is a very important skill that needs to be worked on.
Okay, so our narrative retell of choice, in order to work on this task, we decided to go ahead and go with Story Champs. So Story Champs, according to Almubark et al. 2025, is a series of short stories that breaks down for kids how to be mindful of the different parts of the story. For example, character and setting. So, for example, here, Story Champs has select visuals that it uses. And this can be in many different forms that the speech language pathologist can provide these visuals. For the case of the video that we're going to watch later on, it will be in popsicle stick form, but they also have cutout versions of the visuals as well. And then hopefully the goal is eventually they will get to retelling the story without using any of the visuals. So Story Champs has visuals already included to break down the different parts of the story, such as character and setting, and then expands from there to try to get the student to do it without visuals. Story Champs is used with AAC. Um, It can also be used without AAC. There are two different ways that it can be used. So, Story Chance has many different levels that are used. For our case that we're going to use later on, we're going to be using level A, and it's going to be the one that is applicable for AAC. And so they're going to look a little bit different depending on what level they are and also what grade level. So the stories can differ throughout each grade level and also differ in level within the grade level itself. And depending on what you're using, the AAC and or just your verbal output. Storage champs. So according to Hessling and Scholl 2020, it was noted that storage champs can be used in many different environments. So from a one-to-one setting or large group or any other settings as well. So it can be used in many different settings throughout the school system. Story Champs provides vocabulary expansion. So within Story Champs, they try to use different vocabulary words that might be a little bit higher up in a target compared to the grade level that is being worked on so that they can be exposed to new vocabulary terms. And then lots of retail opportunities. So there are lots of stories within Story Champs, all depending on grade level. And then there's also social interaction opportunities and applying stories to their lives. So those two kind of look like the example of basically retelling the story either with a team or with a partner, just kind of working on breaking down that story retell with someone else, getting that social interaction while learning at the same time. And then, of course, applying stories to their lives. They're going to learn more about each other as they apply the story. Oh, this is something that happened to me as well. So with like John, what we're going to read later on, um, someone might mention, oh, I also fell off my bike and it was very painful. So, storage champs overall is the opportunity to have the SLP or the adult read the story, allow for the students or the student, depending on the class size, to retell the story, whether it be in front of everyone, or maybe they get some partner work to retell a story, or if it's one-on-one, they just get to retell it, and maybe the SLP or the adult that's helping them will assist them if they need it. And then once they're done retelling the story, if they use the visuals, eventually they will get weaned off the visuals. And then sometimes you also go over the vocabulary that is targeted within story champs so that they are able to identify, oh, this is a vocabulary word that I maybe didn't know very well. So then they get to expand off of that. And then, of course, providing that individual story so that they can take the retell, it shows that they understand it and that they're able to apply it to their lives. So story chance role play. Now we're getting to our role play. A specific emphasis on starting with identifying story elements, for example, character. So the main parts of story chance, identifying those story elements after the story is told.
Prior to the session, the speech language pathologist programmed the vocabulary needed on Kenzie's device. The story champs passage chosen for this session is John crashes his bike, marked as a level A for story champs. Level A is noted as a lower level for story champs due to Kenzie's age.
All right, Kenzie. Today we're going to read a short story. I'm going to read you the story and I want you to use our story element popsicle sticks to retell the elements of the story. First, let's review our story elements. What is this one? Person. Mm-hmm. That's right. What about this one? Place. You got it. And then what about these two? Feeling. Mm-hmm. Good work. What about these two? Fixed. Feeling. Nice job. All right. Now I'm going to read you the story, and then you will tell me all the story elements. This story is called John Crashes His Bike. John was riding his bike down the street because it was his favorite thing to do. He rode his bike really fast, and then he accidentally crashed into a rock. John cut his knee. He was sad because the cut hurt. John ran home and said to his mom, "I need a Band-Aid." She put a Band-Aid on his cut. After he got a Band-Aid, John's knee felt better. All right. Now, Kenzie, was our main character a boy or a girl? Boy. That's right. He is a boy. Now, where did the story take place? Yes, on the street near his house. Now, what problem and what was the problem and what was the emotion from that problem? Crash, bike, got, hurt. He was sad. That's right. He got hurt and he was sad. Now, Kenzie, what was the solution to the story? And what was his emotion after the solution? A Band-Aid from he. She felt. Great work. So today we learned that the main character of our story rode his bike and got into a crash. He was sad, so he went to ask his mom for help. He got a Band-Aid and felt much better. Next week we'll read about Megan and how she got a flower. The speech language pathologist takes Kenzie back to class and gets ready to prepare her device for the next story retell.
So a couple of the questions that we developed for the class are, where can I find the AAC-based version of Story Champs? How can I get the classroom teacher to be involved with adding vocabulary needed for the story, or even just in general in the classroom? And if I don't have the AAC version of Story Champs and my client uses AAC to communicate, should I not use Story Champs at all? And these are our references.